Well, okay, I'm going to come on here and hope that my counterpart is coming along pretty quickly. I think I see something. Somebody had to restart his computer this morning. So I was just thinking, well, I hate to leave people hanging. So, good morning, everybody. How are ya? Last night was sure a rocking good time here. North central Oklahoma. I don't know how far that storm got last night, but the wind was insane here in Luther, Oklahoma. It was quite insane. We didn't lose any trees, fortunately, but I sure did lose a bunch of my corn crop. So I was like super sad about that, but I kind of poked him back up and then just said, hey, buddy, you can do it. So that's where we are with the corn. And I hope nobody had we didn't have any trees down, which was really nice. I hope nobody else did. I don't know if there was hail. There wasn't any out here, but it was nice to kind of get a respite from the cracked ground. So that was really nice and super happy about that. But today is going to be, I'm afraid, like a little bit like walking on the sun. With the humidity and everything else, I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to be so hot. Okay, well, I saw my counterpart pop in for a minute and then he's out again. He's having computer troubles this morning. So I think what we'll do is we'll start out with the girls and we'll just bring in Representative Conley and we'll just start and then hopefully we can get Mr. Michael in here at some point. So anyway, good morning.
Good
Sherrie,
morning.
How are you this morning?
I am wonderful. We didn't get any of that blessed rain last
night.
Oh,
no, you didn't get any?
No, we didn't.
I
wish that we had it skirted around us. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Seriously, because the western part of the state's been getting some really nice rain and usually they don't get any. So I'm super happy for them to have that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not, I'm not that if I can't have it, you can't have it either. I'm glad they're having it. They usually are the driest part of the state. So good for them. Yep. But man, that heat dome. So it comes in from the west and just stops right in the central part of the state. And we've just been getting bupkis. And I don't even remember a June. Do you remember a June recently where we've had over 100-degree temperatures?
No, that's what I was telling my husband last night. It was like, I don't know what this summer is going to be like if we're getting 100-degree weather already. And in fact, in my recollection, most of June has always been rainy. I remember several years when we've had swimming pools that, using the pool was spotty in the month of June.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, for sure. But it's so weird. This is why I am not on board with the climate change thing because I remember, oh my gosh, I remembered July 4th when we were supposed to be having cookouts and it was so cool and rainy and we were like hiding underneath the overhang in the garage to cook burgers or something.
Yeah.
So I mean it just depends on what the jet stream does, and it depends on all those other things. So I don't think we're gonna die, but right now, oh my gosh, and my old dogs, my giant old dogs, my Pyrenees, they're so old, they can't stay outside. So they're camped in my sunroom, just lying on the floor.
That's funny.
Well, because I can't leave them outside. I'm afraid they're going to have a stroke.
Okay, I'm
they're
not
too
sure.
old.
Here, hang on. But that's going to bug me. Sorry. Okay, there. That works.
So funny.
I have a black doodle, and when she gets out in the sun, that's what she does. I mean, she's not out there very long, and she comes back, and her backside is just hot. And I don't keep her out there very long. And of course we keep her shaved, pretty short in the summertime to help with that. But I've got to get my pool put in pretty quickly because she loves getting in the water.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
So yeah. So when we do keep her out there, we keep her. Something's going on with my light. Can you see that?
I know.
So anyway, so yeah, she loves being in the water, and I need to get her something she can play in during the season.
The problem is my husband overfeeds my Pyrenees, and so they look like they look like sausages, giant sausages, and if they ever got in water, they would sink like stones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, I never could get mine off of the tanning ledge. She just wanted to play. Of course, she would play fetch 24/7 if we would let her. And so that's what she had fun doing, was fetching her stick and getting back in the water and sitting waiting for the stick to get thrown. So
that's funny.
Yeah. But
I wish we had a pool. Okay. Well, here's what ended up happening to Michael. So Michael just texted me. And he said we had a power outage. They had power outages apparently in Edmond last night with the storm, and it did something to his laptop. It won't run any programs and just freezes after 10 seconds.
Oh, no.
So education, everybody out there in podcast land, plug your computer into a surge protector.
Yeah.
That stops a lot of that.
Yep, sure will.
All right, so Michael and I were going to talk about the Supreme Court decision, Oklahoma Supreme Court decision yesterday, and so we'll talk about it more later. But I did want to point out that it was. I'm reading from the Oklahoma Voice. Oklahoma Supreme Court strikes down Catholic charter school. Catholic leaders say that they'll explore all legal options. The Oklahoma Supreme Court has rejected the existence of a publicly funded Catholic charter school in the state. And it was a majority opinion 6-3. So 6 out of the 9 ruled against the state paying for a private charter school.
Interesting.
And religious charter school.
That's interesting.
And there was I'm going to read what... if I can find it. Okay, so this is what Gentner Drummond actually said. The framers of the U.S. Constitution and those who drafted Oklahoma's Constitution clearly understood how best to protect religious freedom by preventing the state from sponsoring any religion at all. And that's my personal perspective. Sherrie and I were just talking before she got on. If you have not read the book Bonhoeffer by Eric Metaxas, I really suggest you read that book, not just because it's a phenomenal book. I mean, to actually learn about, oh my gosh, I've forgotten his first name. Is it Eric? Dietrich Bonhoeffer. To learn about Dietrich Bonhoeffer and his life was amazing. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. The man was
He's incredible.
Oh my gosh. Just a mind beyond minds. I mean, he was so fat. He was so smart.
And before his time.
Way, oh, 100%, Sherrie, way before his time. And about 2/3 of the way into the book, because the whole book is, it's filled with his sermons and, his writings and his thoughts about religion and the state and what was going on in Germany in World War II. But about 2/3 of the way into the state, he starts talking specifically about what he thinks about what happened. Because if you don't know, in Germany, they were a Christian nation and they did have numerous Christian denominational churches. And they did not have a state church, really.
Although the government was communist. They had two parties. They had a communist party and a Marxist party, didn't they?
Not in Germany at the time of Bonhoeffer.
Okay.
At the time of Bonhoeffer, I'm trying to remember. So, I isn't that sad? I read that whole book. It's like, but I'll have to go back and refresh my memory. But it wasn't like that at the time. They had just, remember World War I, and they had just come out of, they owed reparations to the United States and all these other countries. And they briefly had a republic, the Weimar Republic. They briefly had the Weimar Republic before. Then they ended up having, another socialist person come, some other people come in, but it was never part of the reason they believe that Hitler rose to power was because of a backlash. Basically, Germans were so poor after what the pre-United Nations made them do in reparations to the other countries over World War I, that they were so poor that they were just, they were suffering something terrible. So when, Hitler comes along and says, we'll restore Germany and tell them to all, we'll get America or whatever, everybody was going, yeah, I just would like my life back. So you have to read history to understand kind of how that can happen. But they did not have it wasn't like England, where they had the Church of England and they had Christian churches. But what ended up happening was so many of the Christian pastors got together and they were trying to repel the Nazi plan to kind of take over the church. And then, you had a couple of weak pastors and, then basically before you knew it, you had the church becoming an arm of the Nazi government and spewing Nazi propaganda. And that was when Bonhoeffer went, okay, wait, that can't happen. You cannot have, and he wrote a really excellent, what he wrote about the church and the state at that time. Oh gosh, he said, something happened to my laptop. So I don't think Michael will be on today.
Okay.
He wrote a really interesting, several little sermons about the fact that the church is really the watchdog. And I hadn't thought about this before. The church is really the watchdog for the state. Because if you want the country to be moral, if you want the country to be follow Christian principles, for example, if you want all of that to happen, then essentially you have to have something watchdogging the state. But if the state comes in and takes over the church in any way, funneling it money, giving it a tax break, paying for kids to go to a religious school, now you've intermingled them.
Well, and I think we're seeing that in America now, that we have churches that are 501c3s.
Correct.
And so they have
exactly.
Yeah, they have that standing, and the government threatens them all the time. I mean, go look at COVID and what happened during COVID, and then that they had the right to tell churches that they had to shut down and we'll pull your 501c3. They threaten them with it all the time, just like they do the schools, telling them they're going to pull their funding. So anytime you mix, federal with local, or federal with church, or local with church, you get those issues when you have somebody lording over you. Then then you tend to be afraid of that lord, right?
Well, yeah, because it's like Pinocchio. I mean, the government's pulling your strings then at some point in time. I mean, you said it beautifully about COVID and what happened during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So how was the church, the watchdog of the state at that point?
Yeah, because it'd been infiltrated, and I really do think that we're seeing that now. We're hearing about, or I'm hearing about how some of our schools that teach theology and our seminaries, how they're being infiltrated, and the theology being changed and modified, and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, we're gonna have to be careful. And I think I said this to you earlier. The only way that we're going to be able to remedy that, if we want people to be able to use their own dollars to pay for private schools, is to eliminate. True school choice is eliminating property taxes, and then everybody has that money to go.
What did you say?
I know.
Are you implying we don't own our own property, Sherrie?
Yeah, I am. You're renting it. You're renting
it from the government.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, when they can take it from you for owing them, $2,000 or $3,000, you don't really own your property. I mean,
no, they do.
Yeah. So that would be the way to eliminate that. Of course, when you do that, you have to raise things like use taxes and sales taxes and things like that, use fees, and you're going to have to supplant it somehow.
Well, and I know this is a novel and bizarre idea, but follow me here, or we cut spending.
Yeah. But I mean, the schools have to be paid for somehow.
Well, and that is true. And it's set up in our Constitution that that's what we do. And so that's what we're going to have to do. And I understand that. But I do think, one of the arguments for taxation for years on the libertarian side, and I'm more libertarian, has been use taxes, really, and sales taxes are almost the best way to tax, because you as the consumer have the opportunity to say, okay, well, if you're going to tax me on that, then I'm not going to buy it.
Yeah.
Or, if this is what I have to do to get that, then I'll just say, no, thank you. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there are ways to do it to tax people, because I do kind of think in a way that taxation is theft, but only to a certain extent. So if you're talking about, we have to have, I lost my house insurance because we live in the country, and, firefighters we have a volunteer fire department. And so my home insurance company said, well, I think you're a terrible risk. And they canceled us. Okay.
Wow.
We have to, and they did it to a bunch of my neighbors too. This is a company called Openly, and they were not very open.
No.
And they had closed all of our accounts out here. But there are certain things that that people should band together to pay for, police, fire, roads, bridges, that kind of stuff. But the problem is we started paying for things that were way outside of our purview a long, long time ago. And now just people expect
like other countries' wars.
Like what?
Other countries' wars.
Ooh. No, do we do that?
Not the state, but yeah.
I didn't know that. Really?
I heard but
that's an excellent point. Honestly, Sherrie, it's an excellent point.
Yeah. I heard a pastor use the preamble to the Constitution to say that these are the things that the government is responsible for, right? Keeping the peace. Let's see, what does it say? Hang on.
I'm going to forget.
Yeah, I used to have it memorized. So
It's one of those things where you
I
have to
used to,
remember it and you can't.
yeah. So yeah, we used to say it every day in my classroom. Um, in order to form a more perfect union, so establish justice, domestic tranquility, so providing peace, provide for the common defense, military, promote the general welfare, and that's like Social Security. I totally get it. And secure the blessings of liberty. And so, I mean, if you think about it, to form a more perfect union, well, that could fall, and the blessings of liberty that could fall into things like transportation and infrastructure. I mean, that's what I would consider those things. So, really, there's 5 things in that preamble that the government is really kind of responsible for, and that's
I know, but the promote the general welfare thing has been used and used and
yeah,
used and used to create things that we have that the government should have no purview
yeah,
over
yeah.
whatever. And,
Yeah,
and
and so, and I think this takes me back to, whenever I think about this takes me back to education. That if we were providing the kind of education that everyone needs, that if every child leaving public education or private education, wherever they go to school, if they were getting the education that they need, then we wouldn't have to provide welfare, right? Because they would have an education, they'd be able to get a job, and they'd be able to support themselves, and there wouldn't be any need for that. We create the welfare system, and the people that, well, we create the need for the welfare system by not educating our children properly and making them, giving them that ability to be good citizens. And then you go back to the church piece that, I think it was John Adams that said that, the republic, it's not his exact words, but what he basically said was, the republic only works when you have a moral and just society. And so when you break down what's happening now in our justice system and the moral fabric of our society, and we see that by people fighting for explicit books in
yeah.
schools and sex education in schools. And I mean, we don't need that. Kids don't need that. I'm kind of all over the place here, but I go back to the DARE program, and the DARE
Oh,
program.
yeah.
I mean, we had that, and it
Yeah.
was good for kids, teaching them to stay away from drugs. And it also created a relationship between the kids and law enforcement. And now it was canceled because they said, well, it was causing more kids to be drug addicts. And so I want to use that argument with them on the sex education. It's like, okay, well, if we are canceling DARE because it creates more drug addicts, then we need to make sure that we cancel sex education because it's going to make more sex addicts too. So,
Well, and the studies have shown,
yeah,
that
they do.
yeah, I mean, the studies show that over and over again. We can just see that. I mean,
They're not
good.
willing to admit it.
Yeah, no. I
Yeah.
mean, because the it's the ideal. I read something the other day about progressivism that I had never thought of before. And progressive, it was a person who's actually talking about progressivism. And I don't even remember the context of, because I just read it and went, wow, I never thought about that before. But progressivism means that you literally that you progress, that you're moving beyond, you're doing things to move beyond the position where you're in. But the problem comes in. Progressives generally don't like history because history is in the past. It's not progressive. I mean, we've already been there, done that. We're moving on. We're doing something else. So the study of history is not important to them. So
Hmm.
they don't learn from their mistakes because they don't want to look backwards. They're only looking forwards. And what they're doing in the forward looking position, you can never learn from your mistakes. And I started thinking about that and I thought, think about how realistic that is in terms of what we see progressives do over and over again. And with the rise of the LGBTQRSTV letter, people
Mhm.
for, the if they had looked at history, then the progression wouldn't get, but the worst part about progressives are this. I don't care about history. We're moving forward. I don't need to look back. We're moving forward. Everything has to be better than what we already have. That's the other problem. Everything has to be better. We can't just keep something the same because we're not progressing. So sometimes when you make things, you attempt to make things better, you actually end up making them worse than they were before. Anybody who owns a computer or anything else knows that to be a fact, because sometimes when they're recreating these programs or trying to make them better, they just install these bugs that cause them to crash, right? So it's interesting to me that you have so many things happening in progressivism that are actually swim against real, betterment. It's bizarre.
Because they're not willing to look at the mistakes of the past.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you can't learn.
What I call that is ignorance, actually.
Well, but it is. I mean, because you can't learn if you don't know, and if you refuse to know, then you're making yourself ignorant.
Not learning from your mistakes is like, oh, I drove drunk, and so I got into a crash because I was drunk driving, and there's no cause and effect. Sounds like that's the problem there.
Yes, I do think there was something else that I was going to say about that too, because it was a really great, and I wish I could remember where this article was, but it was such a really great article because I thought, oh my goodness, I have never even looked at progressivism in that light before, where it actually made sense, where I thought, oh gosh, maybe understanding what they think will help us, put some roadblocks there. And I just really hadn't even thought about those things. So,
well, I think the problem is that if we're not looking down the road to see where they're headed, then we're not going to be able to predict what's coming next. But but when you read Saul Alinsky and you read the Communist Manifesto and then study history and see what happens, when they go down those paths, then I think you can put up those roadblocks. But we're not really good. Republicans are not really good about that. They're not good at.
I would have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, they're not really good about looking down the road. It's almost, and this is something that I've learned in the House, being in the House for 6 years, is that that everything is reactionary. That it's oh, that's not happening here, and so we're not going to address the issue until it is here, type thing. And I'm just not that way. I'm like, okay, let's put locks on the doors so the baby can't get out the backyard and get in the swimming pool. It's not, oh, the baby fell into the swimming pool and, now we got to put locks on the doors. No, you can't be reactionary. You've got to, and looking at policy, this is one of the things that I found too, is that they look at policy, like I said, knee-jerk reaction. Oh, we've got to put this in place so that doesn't happen again. But then they don't. A lot of them don't. There are some that do. A lot of them don't look down the line to go, okay, if we do this, what are they going to do to use this in a bad way? And we've got to be thinking that way when we're talking about policy and putting things in place. It's like, what can they do with it?
It's funny that you say that, because I have always felt like Republicans do nothing but play defense.
Yeah.
They just don't play offense. They're never looking, like you said, down the road. They're just playing defense. And it's so funny because when we first started talking about this whole, public money funding private schools and the whole voucher thing, I had said, okay, well, here's what's going to happen with equal access. You're going to have, Satanists wanting to come in. You're going to have, any other religion wanting to come in and have equal access to these programs. That's the way unfortunately or fortunately, that's the way the Constitution works. I mean, people get equal access. You can't just say, well, this group gets it, but that group doesn't. I mean, that's huge. So there, I don't know if you saw this or not, but there was a bill that did pass where I think it was a Clay Stairs bill where kids could leave public school campuses and go to a religious training and then have that
It's called time out of school.
Yeah, right. And then they could actually earn credits, from that. Well, of course, Lucian Greaves, the church, the Satanic Temple, not the Church of Satan, the Satanic Temple, steps up and says, hey, that's great. We're going to start an after school program. We've already got one worked out because they have Satan clubs, in states where, and when we started calling attention to it, they took their video about Satan schools down, which I thought was interesting. But no, they have Satan schools in other states, little schools, where you can become Satanist. And it was shocking to me when Lucian Greaves came out and said, hey, that's great. Equal access. We'll take you up on that. And I think it was Ryan Walters who said, well, that's ridiculous. Satanism isn't a religion. And then somebody, I think it was Clay Stairs then, who was, it was either a News OK or an Oklahoma Voice article where they were quoted as saying this. And I think Clay Stairs said something about, we'll deal with that later or something. And I thought, to me, right there, that's kind of the playing defense thing, just by saying, well, it's not a religion. Well, you can argue, your personal opinion about whether it's a religion or not, all you would like. But if it comes down to, a court decision, somebody's going to say that that's somebody's religion. That's how that works. And if they are, in fact, going to decide that it is somebody's practicing a religion, because, being an atheist is really a religion.
Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
Atheism, Marxism is a religion. Secularism is a religion. They're all religions based on, because it gives you a foundation of thought and a worldview. And so it actually does meet the criteria for religion.
So if that's the case, then, that's what we're going to have. And then me as a taxpayer and as a Christian, I don't want to be funding Islamic schools. I don't want to be funding Satan schools. I don't want to be funding any of that. And so my personal opinion on it is keep them separate. I'm a religion over here. Be whatever religion you want. That was the beauty of America, right?
Yeah.
Be whatever religion you want. Well,
I think
I don't like you being a Satanist, but if you want to, okay. I'm not going to fund that, though.
Yeah. I think that the people that have now started calling public schools government schools, I think that really is spot on. That, we've always referred to them as public schools because they're free to the public.
Yeah.
But I think that, especially Bonhoeffer and, what he found to happen over there when the government took over the schools and started feeding the kids propaganda and that sort of thing. Those were government schools. And if that happens here in America, we're in trouble. It's already happened in some states. Yeah, it's already happened in some states. And actually it's happening in some classrooms in Oklahoma, not every classroom, not every district. But we do have, a few rogue teachers in the state of Oklahoma that are doing those things. And you can see that by some of them that post on Twitter, and you can tell exactly what their thoughts are, and TikTok as well. And so, the only solution there is, I'm going to go back to eliminating property taxes, where people are not forced to pay for public schools, and then and allowing people to pay for whatever school they want to go to, whatever school that might be.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
don't forget, I mean, the legislature also appropriates money to public schools too.
mhm,
So
mhm,
public schools aren't just funded through property taxes. I
right.
mean, they're funded through a multitude
Mhm,
of funding sources that come from all kinds of everywhere. I
mhm.
mean, let's not forget, parimutuel betting was supposed to fix, the education problem. The
Lottery.
marijuana industry was supposed to fix the educate. I mean,
Yep.
it's fountains of money going into that system. And yet, we have what we
Yeah.
have.
I think last I checked, it was like roughly 32% into Common Ed K-12. 32% of the funding.
Property taxes were.
No,
Oh,
the funding that goes into
so
public
you're saying that property taxes fund the majority of government school?
ed. No,
Yeah, because
no,
I was going to say I don't think
no.
that is.
32% of the state budget goes to Common Ed. That's what I'm saying.
No, it's more. No, it's over 50% of the state budget goes to Common Ed.
That includes higher ed, though.
Well, no, fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough. You're right.
yeah, and
Yes,
it may be more. It may be more than 32% now. It's been a while since I heard the figure, but yeah, roughly 32%.
So let me ask you to change off our conversation there, even though it's a great one and we could go on that for forever. And I don't see any comments yet, which is, I'd love to hear comments about that. So what'd you think about the elections last Tuesday?
Well, I think that there were a lot of people that got together and decided that they were done in a couple of places, and the voters spoke. I have to say, I'm very proud of them. It's hard to get an incumbent out, and the people in this area, they use their voices, and of course in the Ada area, they use their voices, and they banded together, and I call it the power of the primary. I mean,
But you're right.
it just goes to show you what can be done when people set their mind to something. When they say, you know what, no, we're not going to allow this to continue, and they make the decision, and they rally behind their people, and they get the job done.
Well, you
So,
know what I was really buoyed by, because I've been not a happy camper. I've had a terrible attitude about what's going on in this state. And I was finally really buoyed by those elections. And part of the reason is, if you look at some of the dark money that went into the Jessica Garvin race, for example, if you look at some of the mailers that were sent out there, people literally went, you know what, I'm done with this. I know the whole backstory behind that. Now I'm finished. I'm not paying any attention to that.
yeah.
And I think it really made me feel good to think that, we might have been a small part of telling people about how these elections are funded and what kind of money some of these people take. I mean, like Jessica Garvin, I don't even remember what it was now, but only like 0.6% of the money in her coffers even came from her district, because it was all, from corporations or various other places. I mean, we were supposed to have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. There's not a corporation or a business in there. It doesn't say anything about that. It's the people. And
Yeah.
I think the people are finally going, wait a second here. I don't feel like this is about me anymore. I feel like it's about something else,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not about me. And I do think that I personally felt like that was kind of what I saw in this election.
Well,
I
I
hope.
will say
Oh,
in the defense of money. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I was just noticing while you were talking that we had a comment. Thank you, Amber Evans, for commenting. Yes, agree about school taxes being taken out of property tax. I also want to know if federal money for military children. Amber's husband is in the military. Military children being given to school districts is being used wisely in Oklahoma. A school district in Pennsylvania in 2006, where our kids went, moved the military kids from one school to another to help the receiving school pay for a new roof. They justified the military kids being moved as they are used to moving.
Wow.
Amber, ew.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that. I don't know. I actually did not realize that the military funds schools where I mean, I wonder if that's base schools that are on bases. I don't know. I would have to have more
Explain that, Amber, if you would, because I do know they do have base schools. There are, and especially, and Amber's and her husband have been stationed. Terry's retired now. Okay, but I do know that you guys were stationed overseas, and right, and
Interesting.
they do have expat schools, so people there are military schools for, the people who are over there in the military. But I do believe they also have base schools as well, because I know that I've seen, funding for base schools. And I think that's what she's talking about, schools on base.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's go back to money, coffers. So the problem that we have is that normal, average, everyday people, they just don't donate to campaigns.
Yeah, fair enough.
And because you don't get money from the people in your district very often, I mean, it's hard to come by. And a lot of times you have to rely on PAC money and other representatives, your friends. I mean, like this session or this election cycle, I gave away, I don't know, I think I gave $3,000 or something like that to different people who are the ones that just don't get money donated to because they aren't supported by the dark money or some of the PACs or some of the middle of the road groups that are the ones that are donating all the money. So it's hard to raise money when you are for the people and not for agencies. I hate to say that.
And I'm going to completely agree with you, because I've seen, I've done deep dives.
Yeah, you've done deep dives. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know exactly what you're saying is 100% true. If leadership, for example, doesn't want you to get back in, you're not gonna, they'll find ways to make that happen.
If you've made them mad, they're not going to give you money. And one of the things, if you go look, I think if you looked through the last several years, I think that what you would find, and I know you've done a deep dive in this, but I think that if you were looking for something specific, what you would find is that the majority of the lobbyist money went into leadership funds and PAC funding, and then it got doled out to the representatives. I think that you would see, if you were to compare the last few years with what happened in prior years, I think that you would see that in prior years, maybe the lobbyist money was handed out to the different representatives and not so much given to PACs, and that over the last several years, maybe money has been given more to PACs than it has to individual representatives. And then those representatives have to rely on leadership to get money.
Yeah. Well, here's my argument about the whole thing. So if we do away with all of that and we say that the donations to your campaign must come exclusively from your district, in all honesty, it puts you on some kind of a level playing field, because I understand what you're saying about people not donating. And I completely agree with you. I mean, it is just very hard to get people to donate to political campaigns. So you've got no argument from me there.
Mhm.
But my point is, if you do away with all of that, and the community has to fund the representative that is their representative of the people, by the people, and for the people, at some point in time, they're going to see that, and there will be a change. But what happens now is it's just exactly like what I've said about public schools, about government schools. So once the parent has the ability to drop the child off at a building and leave, and whatever that parent is doing, be it going to a second job or a first job or a job because they have to, or whatever that is, they now the school is doing that job of raising that child for them for 7 hours, whether
In
they want to believe it or
loco
agree with it or
parentis.
not.
Yeah,
That is what happens.
Yeah, in loco parentis.
Correct. So it's exactly the same thing when you allow these outside groups to come in and fund a people's government, then the people get lazy and they go, well, I don't need to do that because they're getting money. And then it gives them an excuse. Well, I just know their funding comes from outside, so I'm not even going to bother to fund them anyways. You know what I'm saying? So it needs to stop altogether. And we need to go back to knocking on doors. And I know that there are, that it's not today like it was even 10 years ago. And lots of people are behind gates, and lots of people are on property. And I get that. But we need to go back to meeting people head on. And I think, honestly, if we really go back and study what happened in the primaries, I know of at least 2 races, and one of them was Jessica Garvin, and the other one was Greg McCourtney, where people just descended on those districts and walked and walked and walked and helped. And that helped to turn the race. People have the power. But we keep giving away our power. And then once we give it away, we get so lazy that we're like, okay, now I don't even want it back. I just don't even care anymore.
Yeah. Well, but I also have had conversations. See, where was I yesterday? Yesterday, I was at the eye doctor, and somebody who is in government came into the eye doctor and was saying, hi, how are you doing? Are you glad, you're almost done, blah, blah, blah. And then whenever this person left, then the people sitting there that worked in the optical shop part of it said, so are you, are you with the government? And I said, well, I'm an elected official. I'm a representative. And they said, oh, okay. And then, something was said, and I said, yeah, well, there was a primary last week. And they both looked at me and like, oh, I didn't even know that there was an election. And, and you get that so much that people just have no idea. And I just don't know how to get that message out to how can you live in the United States of America and not know anything about the election cycle?
Because we don't teach civics in schools.
Well, that's true. It really saddens me. It makes my heart heavy. And that's why I don't know, maybe there needs to be, a series of things called the power of the primary. And we just need to, I don't know, it's amazing to me that when people want a message to get out, they will share it. And so, my press conference that I did, yes. It has been viewed over 15,000 times, 15,000. And so I think, what is keeping us in my circle and the people, the people in the circles of the people that are in my circle, what is keeping us from sharing that information and from getting 15,000 views in something talking about the primary and how important the primary is, and then the runoff coming up in August?
Right.
Why can we not get that message out there? Can you imagine the difference that it would make if 15,000 people who didn't know before about primaries watched a video about primaries and how powerful that primary is?
And I completely concur, but I like what Amber says. The state election board and county election boards are not doing a good job in publicizing upcoming elections. Oh, they put it on their websites. But why is it with the money that they get that we couldn't buy billboards that just say election, primary election date? That's all they need to say. We're not asking for any candidate or, hey, Republicans or whatever. Every person needs to know when it's time to vote. Yeah. Republicans are entitled to vote. Democrats, independents, libertarians, they're all entitled to vote. And that system should work for all of these people. I agree. I don't know why they can't be out there buying a billboard because, well, we put it on our website. How many people are going to go, I think I'll look at the Oklahoma County election website today.
Yeah. No, people don't. People are too busy for
crap. Nobody's doing that.
They need to be taking that money and running ads.
I agree. Vote, election coming up, primary election. And they're not doing that. My God, they could have a presence on social media. If I was running the election board, I'd put something on TikTok. Oh, yes, ma'am. We would have a presence on TikTok. And it would be like, do you realize that there's an upcoming vote? Your primary is in blah, blah, blah. You can get, go to the election board for this or that, it seems like it would be a no-brainer to get that done.
Yeah. And instead, and I don't know what the law reads. I probably need to go back and read that again. But in years past, you had to put notices in newspapers. Well, in the 6 years that I've been in the House, we have made some adjustments so that the law reads that it can be posted on websites and not just in the newspaper. But it all needs to be changed that way. It all needs to be changed so that it's not just happening, in the newspapers that nobody reads anymore.
Oh, absolutely. But then, there's another thing too. And Sherrie, I know you'll agree with me on this. So I have a friend. I love him dearly. He's one of the nicest people I know. He literally told me the other day when I said, I don't know, what's going on in your neck of the woods. Are you, voting in the primary? Well, Jenny, I don't get involved in politics.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you explain to me one area of your life, especially today, that isn't affected by politics?
Yeah. Every bit of it.
So how do you just go, whatever? I mean, honestly, Sherrie.
I would love. Has he ever told you why he doesn't get involved in politics? I don't. But he ever said why? Why does he not vote?
He has a business, and my inference. I'm just inferring, but my inference has been that he does not want to seem as though he's affiliated with any kind of partisan issue because that might harm his business.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you don't go into you don't have to go selfie going to vote. Who's going to know?
Well, and so that means that he's not registered.
I'm assuming. I'm just going to assume.
And somebody can get online and determine, what party you're affiliated with if they have your birthday. But for me, actually, I think I would much rather know that somebody is engaged in the political process, even if we don't agree, than to know that you don't care. Nobody's going to know how you vote. Just that you voted and what party. If you don't want anybody to know what you're affiliated with. This is the problem that I have with the state of Oklahoma is that as an independent, you can't vote in, Republican, primaries and that sort of thing. You should be able to. But I understand the control piece there, that they're trying to control it. But I don't know. I just, in this day and time, I don't know how you can buy groceries and buy gas and watch TV and see what's happening in the White House and go, yeah, I think I'm going to sit this one out.
I like what Sarah said, because her experience has been my experience. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was that way before I ran for office. I was an armchair, policymaker for federal government. That was what I did.
I was an armchair policymaker for the federal government. And Amber says, followed up about the election board's not hitting hard about, getting people to do. But they wanted the taxpayers to pay a large annual fee for Eric, which we didn't do, to do the job of what the state election board had the authority to do in the first place per S26.
Mm-hmm.
So OS 26.
Yep.
And good for you, Lonnie Burns.
Hey, Lonnie Burns.
That's good. Yeah, because people forget that there are school board elections. People forget that there are, school bond elections. People forget that there are all these things. I have a guy, another friend of mine. He actually paints my house when it needs it. And, he came over one day and I said, hey, real important election. Are you going to vote? And he goes, well, I really only vote for president. And I went, and so how's that helping you here?
Yeah.
I was like, and I don't know what it is, but people seem to think that it's a top-down structure. So if you get the one perfect guy in as president, your whole life is, wonderful. And it's so not true. People don't understand federalism. Again, we don't teach civics, so they don't know it. Federalism is the idea that the federal government is supposed to, just like you said earlier, function on just a few things. It does just a few things. Mm-hmm. The states are relegated everything else. And this state, Kansas, doesn't need to be like Missouri, like Arkansas, like Oklahoma, and like New Mexico. We're not supposed to be that. As a matter of fact, it was Jefferson who said that he loved federalism because he saw the states as crucibles of experimentation, basically. Mm-hmm. So that states could do different things and not all states would do the same thing. And the idea was, hey, if you don't like it in California, you can move to New Mexico, and that was the beauty of the whole system, mm-hmm. and which meant that everything was about local control. But if you're not voting in your school boards and you're not voting in your election for your city council, then you're out right there.
Yeah. So when you mentioned the fact that some people only vote, they say they only vote in presidential elections, like, okay, that's kind of like a kingship,
Yes.
It's like you're deciding. I mean, of course, it's the people's decision on who's the king and not based on blood. But thinking about the king being the one.
Sort of. We did have the Bushes
and the Kennedys. Yeah. But if you look through history, all of the people who have been presidents sorry, my eyelashes are hitting my glasses. There is some kind of connection all through history with all of them, that they've all been chosen by a group for one reason or another, either by blood or by connection. And so I use the term incestuous because that's really pretty much what it is. But and we have that here in Oklahoma a little bit.
Yes, we do.
There's some of that, and you get those rogue cases, like me, for example. I'm one of those rogue cases where nobody recruited me. I wasn't a friend of a friend. It was this is what I feel like God is telling me to do, and so I did it. But in a lot of cases, it's somebody who's been recruited by someone else, and Yeah. I have some examples, but we're not going to talk about that here.
Well, but I look at things. People don't understand that we have a swamp in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we absolutely do. When Trump coined that term, I thought, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And people don't understand what the swamp is.
Yep.
And I'll give you a really good example of what the swamp is. I am a legislator. I am no longer a legislator, probably because I termed out, not because I did the rogue thing like Sherrie Conley and left before my time was up. So you're a rogue in several different ways, you realize.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a legislator. I was a state legislator. I was termed out. I didn't have anything else to do. So somebody put me in the transportation office. And now I'm in the transportation office. But now I'm getting moved from the transportation office to OHMS. And now I'm in OHMS, but I'm going to go to the state tax commission. And it's just these same people that go. And now I'm finished at the tax commission. So I'm going to run for corporation commission.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the same thing. It's a revolving door of people who cannot or will not get out off the government teat.
Yeah. Well,
they won't do it. They won't go out and get a job where they have to actually work and pay taxes on a business that they have to actually go to every single day. It's this revolving door of what state agency am I going to go to next? Where am I going to be appointed next? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you though that that government gets into your system, and politics, I guess, really politics gets into your system, and it's one of those things where if you really, really enjoy it and you love what you're doing, it's hard to get out of it because you believe, like me, I started as a teacher. I went in to work on education. I'm leaving because I want to work on education. And so, there will be something somewhere, whether it's policy or another position. I don't know, another agency, who knows what it will be, but it's because I want to work on education. And some people are like that. That's what they've decided that's what they want to do. And they want to continue trying to make the best out of what we've got. So,
well, and
I'm trying not to say too much without being,
and I see your perspective, but I'm so conflicted because again, I don't like the revolving door of politics. I don't like that. I mean, we're not getting new ideas. The old ideas are just circulated around over and over. And that's what Trump meant by the swamp.
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
I do agree with that.
If you leave and you go to a nonprofit, we've seen nonprofits in this state push SEL, push CSE, what is it? Sex education. What's the C stand for? I've forgotten suddenly.
Gosh, it's been so
anyway, the push sex education. Mm-hmm. So we've seen all of these awful nonprofits operating parallel to schools, involved in schools that are pushing all the crap that you and I don't want in public schools. Mm-hmm. So it's a real, I don't know, Sherrie, it's a kind of a toss up. I don't like either thing. So what do you do?
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm sure there are some good nonprofits out there that are associated with schools, and I certainly don't want to poo-poo everything.
Yeah.
But I'm a cynic, and everybody knows I'm a cynic. So,
at the end of the day, I really think it comes down to your intent, and people just have to know what your intent is. And like I've got people, I've got one of my biggest haters out there who has said that there was a lady said, I'm hearing a name being thrown around either for as a replacement for Ryan Walters or running for the State Department of Education, who would be who would make Janet Barisi and Ryan Walters seem like besties in education, to education, I think. Besties to education. And this person, my hater, commented and said, if you're talking about Sherrie Conley, you are correct. And I thought, this person is implying that I would be worse to education than, in their opinion, worse to education than Janet Barisi and Ryan Walters, meaning that I would destroy education more than what they believe those other two have, which I don't believe either one of them have done any harm to public ed.
Oh, well, we won't get into that.
Yeah, no, we won't talk about that. But they're saying that I would be worse to public ed than the two of them. And I think, what have I done for people to think that I would be bad for public ed? I mean, all I want children to be protected and educated. I want them to be safe at school, and I want them to graduate high school with a degree to where they can go to college if they want, they can go to trade school if they want, they can go flip burgers at McDonald's if they want. Whatever they want to do, the world is their oyster, and they can go do whatever they want to do, but they're prepared for it. They're not going to have to be on public subsidies and welfare, and they're going to be educated to the point where they know that in June they're going to go vote, or in August they're going to go vote, and in November they're going to go vote, and that there are school board elections and city council and mayor elections and all of these things. I want kids to be good citizens, and that makes me a bad guy? I don't understand that.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with your first couple, which is why I went. Think about how our verbiage has changed, and not us, but how other people have changed the verbiage that we deal with. So safety, child safety, and you know this, you're going to start laughing, I know, as soon as I say this. Child safety now means that you're a bigot because you don't want people who have other sexual orientations preying on, or regular sex. Well, yeah. Any sexual orientation. We don't want to. People should be able to do whatever they want. I mean, I don't understand why you don't understand that, Sherrie. We should just let people do whatever they want. It's, hey, whatever floats your boat. Yeah. And we literally do have a segment of the population today who just literally will stand, like you said, on disgusting books, feeding children smut when that's way behaviorally out of their wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. And they will fight to keep drag queens in a position where they can affect children by hiring other drag queens. What in the world kind of a worldview can those kids not get out of? I mean, how does that not somehow translate into what you're teaching or what you're doing or into that school? So that's where your problem is that your hater is clearly on the opposite side of the road where we are, and wants to make sure that people who are harming children stay in public schools, and that we make sure all kids have comprehensive sex education. That's what the C was. Comprehensive sex education, because they can't survive without it. And all these other nonsensical things when you're just thinking, you have to be kidding. I'm only worried about kids reading and being able to understand what's going on in the world around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So bad you, Sherrie.
I know. Shame on me for wanting kids to not have to be exposed to dirty books and sex education and and predators. It blows my mind. When I read that, I thought, you know what? I really wanted to, kind of go after that person that said that. And I thought, it's not even worth my time.
But it's not going to help.
No, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change anything.
Which is sad. But I mean, and I guess that's the reason why, when we've had a really great discussion, I think, because we're going to have to wind it up here. We're already an hour in. Can you imagine we talked that long?
Yeah.
But we've had a really great discussion.
We need to finish our conversation about where we go from here.
Yes. Oh, go.
Yeah.
Do.
So, no, I want to hear your last statement. What was your statement there going to be? Do you remember? Okay. That's okay. If you think of it, interrupt me. So anyway, we got Kendall Sacchieri, and she's up against a Democrat coming in November. I don't know if the guy, I can't think of his name, that beat McCourtney. I think he's got, I don't know if
Andrew.
It starts with a W.
Yes.
Yeah. Wen something, W-E-N something, I think. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know if he has a challenger, a Democrat challenger or not.
Remember.
I don't see either one of Kendall or this other guy that beat McCourtney. I don't see them losing to a Democrat. But stranger things have happened. But what I do know is that there was a press release put out either this morning or late yesterday. Senator Wingard. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber.
Yes. Thanks. So the Senate is convening to come back and redo another election for the pro tem elect July 15th. So that'll be interesting to watch that. That shakeup will be interesting. But, here's the thing is that it's all the same people voting. They just won't have McCourtney to vote for. McCourtney will still be there to vote. Garvin will still be there to vote.
But that's my question, because somebody else told me this the other day, and I thought that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because how can you do that? Some of these people have lost. You need to wait until after November's elections to determine who's really in the seats before you do any kind of a vote like that, because you've already embarrassed yourself once.
Yeah. So what will happen is they'll do this preliminary vote in July, and then they will vote again in November when the new people are seated. And so there's always two votes, just like right now. Kyle Hilbert is the pro tem elect, or the speaker elect, but there will be another vote once everyone else is the new people are seated, and so they'll have a second vote on that. So I guess it's in the rules that way. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch what happens in the Senate. I wonder if they have enough votes now to be able to get the person in there that's going to be not quite to the middle. Yes, absolutely. 100%. That pro tem seat is critical. And that's what I kept saying. So if you look at, and I don't know if we talked about this last time, but if you look at the nominations or the governor's appointees for this session, there were 7 or 8 that were not confirmed. And I wonder what happened with that normally in years past, and maybe this is Treat trying to be a little bit more diplomatic. I don't know, maybe. Normally in the past, if a sitting member has refused to sponsor the appointee, then Treat has always sponsored that person. And so this time around, he said, he made the declaration that if the sitting member, the senator, does not sponsor that appointee, then he is not going to sponsor them, that the sitting member has to sponsor them. And that's the reason why we didn't get those 7 or 8.
Interesting.
Yeah, we didn't get those 7 or 8 appointees across the line. And some of them were key critical seats, appointments. Like one of them was to the library board. One of them was to the state board of education. I don't know what the other, 5
I looked, but
yeah. I don't know what the other 5 or 6 were for, but I do know that there were 2 key ones that really needed to get across the line that didn't, because the sitting senator for that district did not sponsor them, and Treat refused to sponsor them. And so, I wonder if there was some kind of deal made with that. You just never can tell what the reason behind that kind of declaration when you've always done it one way and then you choose to do it a different way. You never know what the reasoning is for that, and whether or not there's, a side conversation or a backdoor deal that was made. I'm not going to imply that there was, but I mean, you just don't know.
But it's politics. Come on.
It is politics. It is. And so for him to stand up and make that declaration right here at the end of his tenure is very suspect to me, and makes me wonder, what's going on there, what kind of deal was made in order to be able to, stand up and say, I'm not going to do that. Could be for his next vote. And, you just never know. Anyway, so my point in talking about this is that I believe that if McCourtney had gotten reelected and was the president pro tem over in the Senate, that this year probably would have been the last year that we got some true conservatives across the line.
Yeah.
That there would have been more of that because it's no secret. McCourtney is a moderate, and you can tell that by his voting record. I'm not kicking him for that. That's his. Those are his opinions, and what.
Well, and he was elected, so there you go.
And he was elected, and everybody has the right to run and try to do their best to get elected. And so that's what makes this country great, is that you are free to run for any seat you want to run for, as long as you meet the requirements. And so, but I think that with McCourtney as the president pro tem, I think that there probably would have been less conservatives put into some of those appointed seats. I think it probably would have been 4 years or the next pro tem, depending on where that person sits. Anyway, just my opinion, just from knowing what I know and seeing what I've seen and understanding how the process works. That's my thoughts. So I'm hopeful. I hope that Senator Bullard gets to be the next president pro tem over there. That is that's my hope for the state. We'll see.
We've had Senator Bullard on our program. He's probably one of the most. He's made some votes that I've wanted to go. But over the, he knows civics. He was a history teacher. He's a very reasonable man. That's probably one of my favorite things about him, is he's very reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And you can talk to him and he never shuts you down. He's never shut me down. Mm-hmm. We've always been able to have conversations, and I do respect that highly
mm-hmm.
in elected representatives, because we may not agree, but you're never going to learn anything if it comes down to, well, I just don't agree with you and you need to shut up because my way is the highway. Or we have so much of this banging going on and nothing is getting learned, and people are just walking away with hard heads and hurt heads. And no problems are getting solved. So my number one component for anybody who, if they say they want to be an elected official, if they're unable to listen, and respond and have conversations about things that they don't necessarily agree with which they don't agree, then they needn't run for political office. I mean, because they can't represent all the people then.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you change your core beliefs at all.
Yeah.
But you certainly might learn something, if you talk to somebody that you don't agree with.
Yeah. Well, and it may not change your core beliefs, but it might change your mind about something.
Correct.
Whenever I came into
Absolutely.
into the house, I had a completely different view of school choice, and I was public school. There is no other way. I educated my kids that way. I worked in the public school. But
And then you met me with all my homeschooling kids.
And met you and all the homeschooling kids and all the homeschooling parents out here. I have a huge group of homeschool parents out here, and I completely respect them. And I believe it. I believe that it just takes all of us. And I have to go back to Jesus and his 12 disciples. That none of them were exactly the same. They didn't all they weren't all fishermen, and they weren't all tax collectors, that they came from all different walks of life, and all had their own opinions and their own failures and their own strengths and weaknesses. And, and that's the way it is with us in government. I mean, I'm not perfect. You were saying that Bullard had some votes that, made your eye twitch. And, I've done the same thing. I've had some that, now make my eye twitch, honestly. And so we have to go in with the attitude that we are going to be a servant to the people, and not to systems, and not to organizations. And you have to be willing, like you said, you have to be willing to listen, and not change your core beliefs, but change maybe your ideas about some things that maybe you don't know it all.
Well, and perception is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I went in, that's one of the reasons why I'm getting out. I think I said it before, that I went in wanting to work on education. I worked on education a little bit, and then kind of got shut down on some things, and saw some things that needed to be changed. And, the powers that be didn't agree with me. And, a lot of other people, parents, for example, they don't agree with me, or the parents. It's what I'm saying. It's not parents who don't agree with me. It's they didn't agree with me and the parents. Is that clear? I want to make sure it's clear. Okay.
Yes, it's you and the parents against them.
Yes. And you get to a point where they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to let you work on that. And so I just decided that, okay, so you go outside of the system, and then you go teach the masses what they need to do in order to make the change. That if it can't be done at the legislative level, then you go teach everybody where it does need to, where, what their power looks like. Because that ultimately, that takes us full circle back to the beginning, talking about the primary election and people not getting out and voting, and that people have to understand that if they want change, they have to be engaged in the electoral process. You cannot, you don't have to run for office, and you don't have to go stand on the corner and hold signs, but you've got to know who stands for what, and figure out who aligns best with your ideologies, and then you go support those people, by putting a sign in your yard, or telling your next door neighbors, or posting on your Facebook page, or whatever you feel comfortable doing. Just voting is, getting out and voting and being a voter is a big step in the right direction.
I agree with you 100%.
So that's where we go from here. We work on educating the masses on the power of the primary. That's one of the things that that I'm going to do is work on the power of the primary, helping people understand that.
I think that's a worthy cause. I definitely do. And I think people, we have a nice group on here this morning watching, and we know that they are the politically active group and they're the ones that pay attention. But boy, I've said this over and over again, and I'll say it as we close today. Sometimes it's hard for us to talk about our political thoughts, especially today. I mean, sometimes families can be a little dicey about that. Friends, that you have, like I have a friend who is a conservative, but she has a lot of liberal friends, and they just stay way off the topic of politics at all when they're together because they just simply can't agree, and it ruins the time for them.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to, and I'm not a person who believes you have to have all the same friends, that you have all the same things in common with. I think that's a pretty small circle that you're going to end up in if that's the case.
It's also small-minded.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're not growing that way. So there's nothing wrong with having those kinds of friends and saying, okay, during this time, we're not going to talk about that. But then also there's nothing wrong with just saying, look, make sure you vote. You and I probably aren't going to vote for the same person. That's fine. But, make sure you vote and tell other people, that here's when the primary is. Here's where the runoff is. We've got to stop keeping that to ourselves. The only way that gets out is by us telling the people that are around us and in our circles. And then, because don't forget, we're all like a Venn diagram, right? This person touches this group over here and this person touches. So we have to remember that and realize that we ourselves sometimes are the absolute best educators of anything, anywhere.
Yeah.
And we need to do that.
Yeah. And just by telling people, hey, there's an election coming up, that will do more than staying silent. I mean, you cannot expect to stay silent and isolate yourself and then not participate in the process and expect things to change.
Absolutely.
The more things doing things the same way and expecting different results, that's insanity. And so if you're not happy with the way things are going in your local town, in your state, and in the country, guess what? You're going to have to get engaged.
Yep.
You're going to have to. Schools, same way. You're going to have to. There's you can't, you really don't have a right to gripe about it if you're not doing something to try to change.
That's 100%.
Yeah. And you don't have to go be an activist, you don't have to get out and, and you don't have to post about it every day on your Facebook page. But, if there's a vote coming up, put it on your Facebook page and then share it again and then share it again. And just so people know.
Yep. And remind them of the importance of local government. We're not a top-down system. You don't get a pass for voting for just the president.
Yeah, we actually fought against the top-down government back in the 1700s. Yeah, we've
moved on. People, wake up.
Moved on. We have definitely moved on. So,
all right. Well, it was so much fun to have you on, and we did we really covered a lot of topics this morning, and I'm glad we did because that was quite enlightening, and it's fun to touch on those topics and have a chance to kind of, meet those out. Next Wednesday, we are going to have Glenn Mulready, our insurance commissioner, on, and Caleb Blount, who is a prominent insurance person in the insurance industry in Oklahoma. She's going to be on with us, and we're going to talk about the fact that, as you heard me say earlier on in the program, I had my homeowner's insurance canceled. And we did find others, but there's some not, I mean, and I've had a lot of people tell me the same thing. There's not some good things going on in the insurance industry in Oklahoma, and we need to figure out what's going on and how we can affect that. So that's what we're going to do for next Wednesday.
Hey,
So
be sure when you're talking to him, ask him to talk about the process and the importance of reaching out to the insurance to his office
okay.
when homeowners get into a situation where they don't feel like their insurance company is doing the right thing by them. I have a constituent who has been fighting since last April to try to get money on a house that a structural engineer told her that her house was not structurally safe and that basically was a complete total. The insurance company, the insurance company disagreed with that. And then the insurance company put several checks out, not enough to cover the replacement of the house, but sent the checks to the mortgage company rather than sending the checks.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so she has had a hard time getting the mortgage company to release the checks in order to get the house repaired. And so ask him about what the best thing is, and make that a point so that homeowners understand that they do have a friend in his office that will help them battle, that you don't have to hire an attorney in order to fight the insurance company, that his office will go to bat for homeowners to try to get their insurance claims taken care of.
Well, I'll actually put that down. I contacted the insurance commissioner's office myself one time on a situation, and I was honestly, for a state agency, I was surprised at how rapid their response was, and extraordinarily helpful. So I have to say, I can at least say that in my perspective, from what I've dealt with, that is one, the insurance commission has been one that's been definitely helpful for me. So we will try to remember to do that.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you again for being with us today, Sherrie. And, thank you for your service to Oklahoma and to Oklahoma kids. And whether or not you have haters or not, we stand with your desire to protect children, and we always will. So,
well, if you don't have haters, you're probably not doing anything. So
I would agree.
Yeah,
I would agree. You wear those as a badge of courage.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, because if you allow them to silence you, then they've won, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Not going to happen.
Nope.
All right, everybody. We will see you. We will have a rope replay on Friday. We're replaying the interview that Julia C. and I did with Josh Burkeen, which was kind of fun. And it's great to listen to Josh. So he'll be on Friday. And then next Wednesday, we'll be live with the insurance commissioner. So we'll see you then. And thanks again for tuning in. Have a great weekend.
All right. Bye.